Well, good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I am Rabbi Jeff Dreifus, and this is the third in our series, Preparing Your Heart for the High Holy Days. And for this session, we are so honored to have a member of our congregation and an expert on forgiveness, very timely for the season of Teshuvah and spiritual preparation. Dr. Rick Balkin. I always called you Rabbi Rick Balkin, but maybe someday, but not yet.
I'm 54 years old. Time is running out.
There you go. There you go. Well, we are so honored to have Dr. Rick Balkin, who has a PhD in counseling education, and he is the department chair and a professor of counselor education at the University of Mississippi down in Oxford, but is a longtime, maybe lifetime Southern Jew. And we are honored to have him as a member of Temple and also as our teacher this evening in this holiday season. So Dr. Balkin, Rick, welcome. We're so honored you're here.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure. I've been in Oxford now. I've been in Oxford for over 5 years now. This is my 6th year teaching at the University of Mississippi and in my 20th year in academe. Where I've been training school counselors, clinical mental health counselors, and future faculty members in the field. And I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, went to Temple B'nai Israel, was involved. It wasn't called Nifty Southern at the time, it was called Softy. And my mother was very active in Hadassah and was a Southern region president in Hadassah. So she was very active. As a matter of fact, I went to camp with Jeffrey and David Danziger. So and I remember staying the night at Rabbi Danzinger's house. So I have some Memphis connections as well. And as my first year in Softy, Danny Mansberg was the president of Softy, so I knew Danny and Lee. So anyway, that's my Jewish geography and name dropping. But I'm excited to be here. I'm gonna show you a slide presentation. I'm gonna have you do an activity with me, and we're gonna have some fun. And I hope from this, you'll eventually turn on your mics and share a little bit, not too much, but a little bit to make it fun and interesting, because I don't want to be talking the whole time. But I'm going to talk to you about something that I've been involved in, oh golly, since probably around 2014 is when I started publishing in this area, maybe a little earlier. 2009, I think my first article came out in this area of forgiveness. So let me get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. But let me talk a little bit about what got me into the idea of forgiveness. And it was a client I saw. I used to work in a psychiatric hospital on an adolescent unit. And when I did that, I had a client by the name of Sheila. And Sheila was a 16-year-old female, and she was suicidal. And what brought her into treatment was she had told her school counselor that her father was sexually abusing her. And the school counselor did all the things a school counselor is supposed to do. The school counselor told the abuse hotline. She calls the abuse hotline. She files a report, and there's an investigation, and the father is removed from the home. The mother says to the daughter, "You are tearing the family apart." And the daughter then becomes suicidal. She attempts suicide, and the caseworker says, "Mom, you should take her to the hospital." So she takes her to the hospital. She gets admitted, and I'm seeing this client and I'm asked to do, I'm to do the very first family session between the mother and the daughter. And I bring the mother into the family session individually. I said, you know, what your daughter needs most right now is support. And she nods and says, yes, I agree. And I'm like, good, let me bring your daughter in. And the way the family conference room is set up, you have this sofa in the back and you have this 2 chairs. And mom's sitting in a chair and I'm sitting in a chair. And the daughter comes in. And when the daughter comes in, she sits down on the sofa and mom doesn't go to sit on the sofa with her daughter. She stays in her chair. And I thought, that's kind of strange. And then the mother opens up with this line. You know, as a Christian, you have to forgive him.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about you all, but, you know, usually as a clinician, I think very carefully about my words, and I'm very thoughtful about what I'm going to say. I wasn't here. Just to be honest with you, I totally messed this up. I said to the mom, wouldn't that be convenient for you? So mom says, you know, as a Christian, you have to forgive him. And I said, wouldn't that be convenient for you? Just like that. It just came out. And mom is looking at me seething. And I'm like, well, then you don't have to choose between your daughter's disclosure and your husband's denial. It just all gets swept under the rug, doesn't it? So that family session doesn't go really well. And Sheila's not going to go home, to be honest with you. She's going to she's going to go to another family to live with. And yeah, she's going to go, yeah, so she's going to go live with other family. And, you know, unfortunately, that's just kind of, you know, what happens. And people say, well, you know, the daughter knew that you were advocating for her. And I'm like, you know, the daughter is very distraught. The daughter is watching her family fall apart. You know, and that's not helpful. So, you know, so the daughter's not like looking at me going, I'm, you know, I'm really happy with, you know, with this situation. No, that, you know, she is watching her family fall apart. I'm going to try and find this, get this PowerPoint up for you, because I want to show you all something.
I have it. You want me to share my screen?
You know what? Yes, I do.
Okay. Here we go. Can everybody?
Right. Yeah. And so if you could go to the 3rd slide, 4th slide. So this statement from the mom, you know, as a Christian, you have to forgive him. It really bothered me because, of course, I'm not Christian, I'm Jewish. So I don't even know if that's true. But the second thing that really struck me was just what am I supposed to do with this? Sheila's life fell apart. And about 5 years later, I go to Yom Kippur services. I've earned my PhD. I've joined a faculty, and I go to Yom Kippur services. And instead of going home after the morning service and staring at the refrigerator until the afternoon service, I stayed for the study group. And in the study group, I learn about the Jewish conceptualization of forgiveness. And there are 3 types of forgiveness in Judaism. The first is kapara, which is, you know, the forgiveness that only God can give. We might think of this during Kol Nidre, for example. The vows that we have broken, and we ask God to forgive for the vows we have broken. One of my favorite refrains during the High Holy Days is, for sins against God, God forgives, but for sins against another person, you have to go to that other person. And that brings us to this idea of silicha. Silicha refers to restitutional forgiveness. I borrow your lawnmower, I break your lawnmower, I repair your lawnmower. We're good. We've made restitution. We've made it right. But then there was this idea of, what about those times when you can't make restitution? And for that, there was this word called mechila. Mechila literally translates to wipe away debt. And this is all out of Rabbi David Blumenthal's work. And this wiping away of debt, that what I want from you, I'm not going to get, so you don't owe me anymore. And I was like, oh my God, that's my client that I saw 5 years ago. That's powerful. Because all of a sudden, we recognize that forgiveness doesn't have to be this interpersonal process where I forgive somebody and reconcile that relationship or renegotiate that relationship. Forgiveness can be this aspect where I don't wish any ill will upon you, but we're done. And it's perfect for situations of neglect, abuse, and things that can't be undone. Slander, neglect, abuse. For instance, you could walk away from this and go, wow, the technology was kind of funky on this. It wasn't working. This was not a good presentation. And you post it on Facebook. And you know what? Your Facebook post goes viral. You get 30,000 hits. And suddenly it's like, wow, no one's going to go listen to Rick Balkin present on forgiveness anymore. And you feel horrible. Oh my God, I did not mean to destroy this man's career. But, and so you go, you know what, Rick, I'm really sorry. I took that post down. I didn't know it was going to go viral, but it's been done and it can't be undone. Everybody saw it. And so we have situations like this. And I try to bring up a comic example, but to be honest with you, what are the things that people have done to you that can't be undone? I'll give you one more kind of silly example. During my bar mitzvah, we had a reception at the temple after the ceremony. And my mother had made this beautiful smoked turkey that she had in the social hall of Temple B'nai Israel. And one of the congregants walks up to my mother and says, Susie, this is really good ham. And my mother goes, ham in the synagogue? Are you crazy? She was appalled. She was absolutely appalled. So, the funny thing is that 30 years later at my daughter's bat mitzvah, my mother walks up to me and says, that Alan Meichenbaum, do you remember when he told me that I had served good ham at the synagogue? And I was like, wow, Mom, 30 years later, some things are never forgiven. We carry stuff around with us, don't we? And, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're wishing the person ill will, but there is a burden to carrying these things around. It adds to our stress, adds to our anxiety. And this idea of mechila to me was very freeing. This idea that I didn't have to reconcile with the person. Maybe they haven't changed. I could simply no longer wish them ill will and move on with my life. So let's go to the next slide. And so we talk about two types of forgiveness. The first type is interpersonal forgiveness. And we all know what that is because we talk about reconciling our relationships. It's a willingness to abandon one's right to resentment and negative judgment and show compassion to the person who might have caused us harm. Generally, there's an apology and a demonstration of remorse from the person who harmed us. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide. So how do we do this? We usually have some insight into the nature of the injury that's caused us anger or shame. There's a consideration of forgiveness and a commitment to forgive. We offer empathy and compassion to the person who has harmed us, and we find meaning in this process. We try to heal the relationship. But that's not the only type of forgiveness. There is also, let's go to the next slide, intrapersonal forgiveness, which is not related to the offender. It's not related to the remorse and change of the offender. It is simply our own process. Maybe the person who harmed us is no longer with us. Or maybe the person continues to not be worthy of a relationship with us. That's dangerous. Let's go to the next slide. So somebody had mentioned earlier about this idea of self-forgiveness, that can be much harder. And yeah, and that goes into, this idea of if we've harmed somebody else and trying to reconcile that relationship, it's just flipped. We recognize that the person who has that we may have harmed, maybe we can or cannot, maybe we're not going to be able to reconcile that relationship, and we have to be okay with that, because if we care about the person, we have to accept their judgment, and sometimes we have to let go of where we are. What can the person do to enhance their own well-being? So let's move on. So we don't always reconcile, but if we are going to reconcile with the person who's caused harm, there is remorse, there's empathy, but we also have to consider culture. In Judaism, there is no mandate to reconcile a relationship. Forgiveness can be an intrapersonal process. That's why we have this idea of mechila, the idea that we can simply say, what I want from this person, I'm not going to get. And I accept that I'm not going to get it. Maybe because they can't afford to give it to me. They didn't break my lawnmower. They totaled my car. And I'm never going to get my car back. And they can't afford to repair my car. Or maybe it's something that can't be repaired. Infidelity, or slander, or neglect. Okay, let's move on. So I developed this model. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this model, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of an exercise. I developed this model about how we work towards interpersonal forgiveness or mechila. And the first step in this model is collaborative exploration. Perhaps, and I would bet, given just the age and stage, you all look to be about 25 years old. So, given about the age and stage of this group, I'm looking at, I bet that you've experienced a pain, that at the time you experienced it, you couldn't talk about it. It was too bad. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being no problem at all and 10 being, this is extremely painful. You could not talk about this pain. But let me ask you this, what eventually happened? If I had to bet, eventually you talk about it. All right. And why does that work? Why does talking about it work? Because if you can't even talk about it, and because it's a 10, Once you start talking about it, it's a 9. You can mention it. When the unmentionable becomes mentionable, right? And it's through this process, what I always say to folks is, it's not any magical therapeutic technique that allows people to heal what's in the heart. It's about the relationship. You can be talking to a counselor. You can be talking to a rabbi. You can be talking to your best friend. You can be talking to a parent or grandparent. But it's it's that relationship. We heal through our relationships. All right. This is why it's so hard to treat a sociopath and change sociopathic behaviors, because sociopaths don't have real relationships. They don't trust anyone. And if you can't relate to anyone, you can't heal. Once we're able to talk about the nature of our pain, we often examine what's the role of reconciliation. Is reconciliation beneficial? Sometimes it is. All right. We see this in, we see that reconciliation is beneficial and that the person demonstrates remorse and change. Like in Star Wars. Probably some of y'all have seen Star Wars. Maybe a lot of y'all have seen Star Wars and don't even want to admit it. But in Star Wars, there's a character. His name is Darth Vader. You've seen him in, and he's a bad guy. He kills baby Jedis. He destroys planets. Bad guy. But he eventually is going to save his son from dying from, I don't know, there's a bad emperor who shoots lightning bolts out of his fingertips to try to kill his son. And he goes, nope, I've had enough, and throws his emperor into a nuclear furnace-like thing. And everybody cheers and thinks the emperor's dead, but he's not. He comes back 30 years later. We didn't know that at the time. But anyway, yeah, we love this movie. But that's what happens. We see this remorse, change, and redemption. We love this story. And we love this story because it's human. Because we believe people can change. If we didn't believe people can heal and change, there would never be any successful couples counseling. Yes, couples have problems, and we admire the couples who have been married for 50 years and never had any problems. But you know what? I also admire the couples who work through their problems and figure their stuff out. They're worthy of our admiration as well. That takes a lot of brave work. But sometimes we're not able to reconcile and renegotiate a relationship. Sometimes, even if we want to, even if we think it's beneficial, the person has not changed. There's no remorse. And so there's two paths that can happen. Either one, reconciliation is not beneficial, and we're going to have to go towards mechila. Or we think reconciliation is beneficial, but they're not going to change. There's no remorse. And we still end up with mechila. Sometimes people don't change for us because they can't or they won't. If you're familiar with the Harry Potter books, Lord Voldemort, bad guy, till the end. Right? People die and they don't come back. Harry Potter is left with no family. But he creates his own. And we don't get this idea that Harry Potter is wounded for the rest of his life. No. We realize that what he wants, he's going to have to find another way to get it. He's going to have to find his love and his family somewhere else. And he does. We love that story too. So the nature of forgiveness is two-pronged. We can have interpersonal forgiveness on one side or mechila on the other. And here's the thing. Forgiveness is time and context bound. You are not a forgiving or an unforgiving person. Rather, you either A, work through reconciling that relationship, but or B, you don't. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it matters based on context. Let me give you an example here. Say, for example, your son or daughter brings home a friend, and the friend is drunk. And you look at your son or daughter and you say, that person's not allowed in our house again. Okay, that makes sense. Well, what happens if your son or daughter comes home drunk? Are you going to say to your son or daughter, you're not allowed in my house ever again? No, probably not. It's the same offense. It's the same offense. But who the offender is matters, right? That matters. And so the context matters, which is why I say you're not a forgiving person or an unforgiving person. You're just a person. And sometimes forgiveness, sometimes you're going to want to reconcile that relationship, and sometimes you're not. And that's okay. Let's go to the next slide. Let's have some fun. I want to show you something. I want you to take your phone and open your camera. And when you open your camera, you're going to go to a questionnaire. All right. And with this questionnaire, it's going to take about 5 minutes to complete. And I want you to read the instructions in the questionnaire and answer the questions. And when you answer the questions, you'll get to a final screen, and it will give you 4 scores. Write those scores down in order, those 4 scores. All right. It'll take about 5 minutes, but you'll write those 4 scores in order. Once you leave that screen, that information is gone. You don't get it back. You can't get it back. So that's why it's important that when you get those 4 scores, you write them down. So take about 5 minutes and do that.
Is there another way to get to it, like a website? I'm old school with the phone, so.
You can use an iPad and just open your camera, and then it'll.
Yeah, I just am a laptop girl, so.
Oh. Yeah.
I study too much to worry about the phone and everything else, so. Okay.
I'll drop a link in the chat. Give me one
Okay,
second.
thanks.
Can I ask something there? Mrs. Balkin?
And so I can see your pictures now, and you know, when you finish this and you have your 4 scores, give me a thumbs up and just let me know. And all right, so awesome.
I have an issue
Okay,
because
With
my
the-
person is no longer alive.
that's okay.
So how do I answer it as if they were alive? All right, whatever.
Balkin, it also depends on what has been done.
Yeah, I don't think any of the questions matter as far as if they're alive or not. It's just how you're feeling at the moment.
Oh, at the moment, because it says did. How did you feel?
How do you feel right now?
Ah, that's different.
Well, it depends on the item, but this is the weirdest thing. That,
Whenever you need me to share the screen again, just let me know.
okay, it looks like we're about ready. So let's yeah, go ahead and share the screen. All right, and let's go to the next slide.
Whoa.
Okay, and so you see here about 16 profiles. All right, and the way this works is we have about we have two types of scores. We have high scores and low scores, and each if you notice there were 4 anchors. And each anchor had 6 adjectives that were opposite of each other. So how do you feel about the person who harmed you? You know, and then it asked you about the extent to which reconciliation is beneficial. And then it asked you about the remorse and change of the offender. And then it asked you about what outcome you were looking for. So each of those 4 phases I mentioned was measured by each of the 4 anchors and the subsequent items in your measure. But this is where it gets interesting. So there's 6 items. All the positive words are 5. All the lower words, all the words that were negative are 1s. And so your scores range from 6 to 30 on each of those 4 scales. The closer you are to 30, the more positive you endorsed adjectives. The closer you are to 6, the more negative adjectives you endorsed. And so go ahead and click on the very first slide in the upper left corner. Yeah, just click on that. So, you know, if you had scores that were all above 18, you know, such as a 26, a 25, a 26 and a 25. If your scores were around all high range, I call this the everything is awesome profile. This means that higher scores are in each of the 4 phases. The person who was harmed or offended, all right, you have positive feelings toward the individual. You view reconciliation as beneficial. You feel that the offender demonstrated remorse and change. And you can renegotiate the relationship. That's, you know, and try to reconcile the relationship. And that would be a meaningful endeavor. Go ahead and go to the home button there. If you click on that home slide, right? Yeah, click on that and click on the second slide. You could also have the no, no, and hell no profile. That's the opposite extreme. All your scores on the lower end, they're all below 18. All right. And in this scenario, the person who was offended or harmed continued as negative feelings toward the individual, or who, you know, you view reconciliation as unhealthy. You feel the offender is unable to demonstrate any remorse and change, and you see the need to move forward in your life without this person. Now, that's not a bad profile. Sometimes we've been hurt and we're angry, and anger gets a bad rap. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. was angry, and look what he did with it. You know, he changed our world. You know, Elie Wiesel was angry. But the thing to remember about anger is that anger is a secondary emotion to fear. that whenever somebody tells me they're angry, my question to them is what are you afraid of? Well, they might say, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm angry. Well, what if the situation doesn't change? Well, that's not going to be good. That's uncomfortable, isn't it? That's the fear of living with that discomfort. So that's the second profile. And then go and hit the home button again.
I can't do that.
I'm sorry?
I can't do that. Somehow on the iPhone, it doesn't work properly. It doesn't give me any, it has given me 4 numbers, but I cannot even go back in pages. I cannot.
Correct.
Page.
Yeah, you just have to write down the 4 numbers. You can't go back. That's
Yeah,
correct.
right.
Yeah.
I remember they were high.
Yeah, okay. And then if you look at those 4 profiles at the bottom, and you could click on any one of them, any one of the 4 profiles at the bottom. That's called the just no profile, which usually means it's not quite no, no, and hell no. It usually means that everything was low, but you had one elevation. That although you see something positive in this person, the remaining elements kind of point to the idea that it's not healthy to be in this relationship. And so just no is sometimes a direction we have to go. But what I thought would be fun, and go ahead and hit the home button again, is if somebody wanted to share their scores with the group, and we could kind of talk about, we don't have to go into deep detail, but you're kind of like, okay, does this really work? Let's give it a shot. Who would be willing to share their scores? Okay, I don't know, Tristan.
So in order,
Yes,
also,
yes, please, in
hello.
order.
Mine were 19, 19, 12, and 14.
Okay, 19, 19, 12, and 14. So we recognize the 2 lower scores, that 19, 19, 12, and 14. And, that 19 isn't a really strong, like, positive. It's kind of like, there's some benefit. I have some positive feelings towards this person. I'm a little ambivalent. And there is some benefit to reconciling, but I'm a little ambivalent. But then that 12 and 14, those are on the lower end. But this person hasn't really changed a whole lot. And, that 14 is, I kind of have to deal with this person. Maybe they're a family member, but, I don't know that they're going to change, and I'm going to have to deal with this by myself. And so it looks a lot like the very last profile in the bottom corner that we just had up that says just no. Yeah, that one right there. Go ahead and click on that. So yeah, that very bottom, that one in the bottom right hand corner, it kind of looks like that. How am I doing, Tristan? Is that kind of accurate?
It's definitely accurate. I'd say
Okay.
that's a pretty good summary.
Yeah. And so, so the closer you are to 18, which is life, but the closer you are to 18, they're kind of more in the middle, and the more, the middle you are, and you're like, and it's the more conflicted you are. I'm not sure which direction to go here. So, anyway, so thank you for sharing that. But maybe that kind of gives you a little bit of insight into, okay, this is where I am in this process. Anyone else want to give it a shot? Anyone else want to play? Okay, I saw Ben's hand up and I saw Terry's hand up.
Sure, I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had a 15, 12, 6, and 14. So I'm assuming I'm in the no.
Yeah, you're kind of in the no, and hell no range. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to tell you the truth, the incident happened today, so I think I'm still definitely processing it. I don't think I have a distance from it for sure. So that's probably where a lot of that's coming from. But I know I'm gonna have to move on because there's just consequences that really can't be
Undone.
fixed
Yeah.
with just simple restitution, essentially.
Yeah. And that's not a bad profile. People go, oh, that's bad. No, that's not bad. All right. But it's that idea that that your journey is more intra-personal, that you understand that, if I were to say, you know what, Ben, I want you to wake up every morning and the first 20 minutes of your day, I want you to just brood about what you're angry about. And do that for about 3 or 4 months. Tell me how you're doing. Wake up every morning and just be angry for the first 20 minutes and then just go and start your day. How do you think you would be interacting with people right after you finish brooding?
Honestly, I think it would be real hard for me to keep through.
Absolutely. That's horrible advice. We would never do that. We would never tell somebody to wake up and start their day angry. I used to have a job I couldn't stand, and it was a 30-minute drive to work. And I would drive to work and I could feel my blood pressure boiling. And I thought to myself, if I don't change jobs, I'm going to have a heart attack. This is not healthy for me. And so to walk around, with this burden, which is why we want to get to the point of, accepting. And when we accept that idea of what I want from this person, I'm not going to get, and I no longer wish them ill will. Why are we able to make that jump? Why are we able to get to the point where we no longer have to wish them ill will? It's because when we recognize that what I want, I'm not going to get, I don't expect anything from them. I've removed expectation of them fulfilling whatever part of the relationship I intended for them to fulfill. When I remove those expectations, I think, and this is maybe a crazy comparison, but think about a time when maybe you really wanted to achieve something and you realized it was a little bit beyond your reach. And so you lowered your expectations and just said, I'm going to do the best I can do. And what a relief that was. And so we do that with ourselves. And sometimes we have to do that with others as well. So it's a skill we have. Terry, you want to go?
Sure. Okay. My scores were 11, 18, 6, and 9.
Yeah. Okay. So, 11, 18, 6, and 9. Again, it's that just no profile that we saw. If you look at the third to the last profile, if you clicked on that one. Yeah. So that elevation, number 2 right here, that elevation where you see that high, it's not real high for you. You're pretty ambivalent. You're like, yeah, I don't really like this person. If you want to go back a slide, I don't really like this person. I'm not sure that we can reconcile. And so
what was that second category?
Role of reconciliation. You
Okay.
kind of see some benefit from it. But the last one, next slide. There you go. You kind of see some benefit. You're a little ambivalent about the benefit, but you kind of see some benefit to reconciliation, but it's just not going to happen. They're not remorseful. They're not going to change.
Gotcha. Okay.
Real quickly, Ellen has been very patient, and I don't want to give Ellen a chance to share her scores, and then I'm going to open it up for some Q&A.
Well, yeah, I would like to see where I fit in because I do have my scores. I did it again. I have to say, because I followed the link on the computer, and the numbers are 13, 14, 6, and 8.
Yeah, 13, 14, 6, and 8. Again, it's relatively lower scores on all of those. It goes back to that no, and hell no, doesn't it? You're just not there. And again, you're that 14, you're moving towards seeing some benefit of reconciliation, but you're more inclined to say no, there's just not. How does that sound? Does that sound accurate?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something unforgivable. I'm not going to elaborate, but this is
No
something
worries.
unforgivable that he did.
Yeah.
And, uh,
And again, it's withdrawing those feelings of ill will to recognize that you're not going to get what you wanted from this person.
right.
Yeah.
And I did take decades to talk about this with a therapist.
Yeah. Good.
Excuse me.
Sure.
I don't know if you could see me because my video is totally black.
Okay.
My thoughts on this subject is that usually when you are really in a crisis with another person, the other person is very, very rarely aware of your plight.
Yeah.
They have no idea in the world that you're suffering
Yeah.
because of them.
Yeah.
They're your hot rod reason that you're going to work every morning and spending 20 minutes killing yourself, actually.
Well, you know,
I was thinking you're going to have not a heart attack, but you'll have something drastic happen to you, maybe an accident or something, because
Yeah.
your feelings, your mind won't get off of that. But you should bear in mind, I think the first thing is that you're never going to have it the way you want it in this relationship, or there's nothing you could say to that person, because if you did even confront them and say, you know, you're making me crazy, that person will look at you with a big question mark, as if to say, what the heck is he talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does he mean? Why?
Let me address that. If we go back, go back 3 slides.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah. If we go back 3 slides, right there. Yeah. You know, one of the areas here, you know, is that, you know, if we think that there's some benefit to reconciliation, and you know, and you're right, you know, we need to make the person aware. You know, the thing that we must do is we have to approach the person who harmed us. You know, we have to let them know, we have to make them aware. And, you know, if they aren't aware, you know, of it, and they look at us like we're crazy, and they're not validating our feelings, you know, that pretty much tells me that they're not going to change, that there's no remorse there. You know, and so, you know, we have, you know, in each of these phases of collaborative exploration, of talking about how I feel about the person who harmed me, thinking about whether or not I want to reconcile this relationship, and the actual reconciliation being part of that, I have some control over that. What I have no control over is the third phase of the remorse and change of the offender. I have no control over that. You know, and so, you know, part of this process, part of understanding this process is that even if you want to heal this relationship, you may not be able to, because the person may be unwilling. What I hope that this model brings to the table, and let's go ahead and stop the sharing, and so I can talk to you. But I mean, if this interests you, you know, so yeah, I did write a book on this, which is on Amazon, called "Practicing Forgiveness: A Path Towards Healing," and it's about it is this Jewish conceptualization of forgiveness. I actually, you know, what a wonderful thing to be able to take a Jewish concept and turn it into a model, and then create a tool where you all go, oh wow, that's kind of accurate. And so what I've tried to do in this book is to integrate stories that help touch on each of these phases of forgiveness, and how, that I think as a society, we have to recognize that, whereas forgiveness is important, it can happen both through an interpersonal lens and an intrapersonal lens, and that this process of whether it's renegotiating the relationship or mechila is a Jewish process, that, we are not commanded, we are commanded to forgive, but not to reconcile. All right. God doesn't want us to go back into harmful relationships. All right. But he doesn't want us to live with pain either. Or she. God doesn't want us to live with pain either. So, what other comments or questions do you have?
Can you just say that last part again?
I, excuse me, I was about to say that God, I was taught that God is the only one we go to for forgiveness. And even through us, ask God if to get our heart free from the one that hurt us. We don't ask the other guy or the guy that's hurt us.
Yeah.
We ask God to help us. And God, please forgive him for hurting me or her, whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think people should be forgiving me.
I do, but I always go back to that passage, and I don't know if it's in the new prayer book, but in the Gates of Repentance, it talks about for sins against another human being, we're required to go to that human being, unlike Christianity that has this oh, you can be forgiven for your sins. No. We can't go to anybody else. We've got to, if we hurt somebody, we are obliged to try and address it. But
it's still in there. We definitely have that where we have to go to the person for sure.
Yeah. And, and so, and I think that's the, but sometimes we've been harmed. And what do we do with that anger and that hurt and that pain? Look, I through my experiences in counseling, and I've worked with everyone from youth to adults in the pain that we carry, and and so I think this concept is a very much of a unifying concept that and that hit on the high holy days of how do we forgive. Because it's not just something that we can, it's not just a decision. An example I'll give you, the Dylan Roof hearing. Many of y'all remember Dylan Roof. He shot up the African-American church in South Carolina. And you can go on YouTube and watch the hearings. They're still there. And you have surviving family members say to Dylan, I forgive you because I have to forgive you, and may God have mercy on your soul. That's a decision, but that's not emotional forgiveness. That's different. We have to be prepared. And, sometimes what we decide to do and what we are emotionally ready to do, those are different. So I know we have to close up and we're running out of time, but I want you all to feel free to email me if you have questions or comments or concerns. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope it was helpful and beneficial. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And
it was a very good session.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
And have you provided your email address?
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I just want to thank you, Dr. Balkin, so much for being here for this really fascinating model based on the Jewish tradition that you integrated into a working counseling and academic model. It's very interesting, and I definitely want to learn more personally. For everyone else who wants to also, I dropped the link to the book on Amazon in in the chat. And as you said, if we want to patronize the Square Books down in Oxford, we can
Yeah.
do so in person as well. So thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Y'all be well.
We appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Thank you so much.
Shan Tova.